Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:38 a.m. East Coast time, Thursday, June 27th, 3 days till my birthday. And we're going to break down this showdown slate in the WNBA. The nice thing is it doesn't start till 10:30 a.m. or 10:30 p.m., don't worry, East Coast time, so pretty late start. And there's a $5,000 prize pool to first in the big GPP. I do not say that you should be playing those big GPPs as often if you've been listening to some of the Patreon exclusive podcasts. But if you're playing a showdown slate, it's pretty difficult to really rely on cash as being something that'll be stable. In the WNBA, it's a little bit more. I guess a little bit easier than other sports because really for the most part the scoring is going to go through like 3 scores on one team and maybe even 2, and that's really what we have here tonight. So I'm going to break it down. There's really no injury news to be of concern today. I mean, Alana Beard came back 2 games ago. She's been playing. We could touch on some things that happened with her in the last game, but for the most part Candace Parker's been back for now 3 games. There's nothing really worrisome in terms of injury news that we have to kind of keep an eye on today, so we're not going to go over that. In terms of pace and the overall total for this game, totals aren't out yet. They should be out later in the day, with it being a really late game tonight on the West Coast. 2 West Coast teams in LA and Vegas. I imagine that total doesn't come out for later in the day, but the thing that I can tell you, and I guess we can just take a peek at it really quickly, is that these teams play fast. They're 2 of the fastest paced teams in the league. The pace for today is one of the biggest ones that we've seen since I've been covering the WNBA. They're the hot fastest games. 84.5 projected pace, which means each team is going to be having 84 possessions in this game. When they play at the above league average pace, both of them, they're going to push the pace even more, if that makes sense. There's about 80 possessions per game that Los Angeles has, and they're going to gain about 4.5 to 5 today. And then even Vegas is going to gain about 2 possessions today in terms of if this were to be playing out over a long haul. I have them projected today as Vegas being a 5-point favorite with a 161 total. Look, I'm terrible at projecting these things for the WNBA because I really don't know how much a player impacts the team, but now all these players are healthy, so we'll see. With Candace Parker, maybe that 5-point spread, she seemed to be returning back to form in the last game, not shooting 11%. Maybe that spread's a little bit closer, maybe a 3, but make sure to check back in on the projections. Those spreads will be updated before lock, which does move the actual projection of players a little bit. If somebody's projection is for their whole team 3 points higher, well, then those 3 points have to go somewhere, right? So it may not be huge, but it's going to change some things. So what you're looking at over my shoulder, and welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Sal Vetri. A lot of people are becoming new here. If you could stop for 1 second, and if you can just hit that subscribe button. I haven't given a ton of value yet, I guess you can say, just through a couple minutes, but I intend to do so throughout this video. So hitting that red subscribe button, if it just takes 2 seconds of your time, if you're at your laptop, you go down, you click on it. I want to just give that little extra push because it does help me a lot. It helps me to continue to make free content in the mornings and also streams during the afternoon because that just allows me to get paid from a third party and not pay anything or charge anything fully on here. That being said, I do have extra content available over on Patreon. People wanted more content out of me, whether it was breaking down my projections for WNBA, whether it was giving hitting information and where my interests are for hitting. I can't put out 5-6 videos a day as a one-man show, so the way that I kind of handled it was creating a Patreon. You can go over there and support me. My projections that you're looking at right over my shoulder are there. You can notice I have the points and the value blocked out today. If you think you could just add up the minutes and the point per minute and get what my projected points are, you're wrong. There's some other things that I factor in: game pace, Vegas, DVP. But you can get the projections over there. I have been doing a podcast as often as I can. It's not going to be daily over there on Patreon because then my plate just becomes too full. But on this one-game showdown slate, I will make a podcast later today filtering down my player pool. And I aim to get my player pool to probably around 8 to 10 players, which you can see is very, very specific for this showdown slate. And then there'll be some articles here and there for WNBA and MLB, all those types of things. So that's over on Patreon. You can check that all out. But for this slate right now, just hit the like button. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button. Notification bell if you would as well. It's a little added bonus. My Twitter is @SalVetriDFS. If you've already been a subscriber, go follow me on Twitter. It helps me out there as well. But I also help you out by posting updates in terms of news. So starting it off. Look, there's a couple of things that we should walk through, and I took some notes down. The first one is Showdown Strategy. It changes a little bit with the WNBA. Overall, though, Showdown Strategy it's extremely volatile. What that means is it's a one-game sample. It's very hard to predict so accurately. Even if you know it's happening all season long, you have a huge sample size, and you know that Aysia Wilson and you know that Liz Cambridge they're just great players, right? That they can project for 30 plus minutes. But on this one game sample, you don't know what happens. Maybe it's a quirky blowout, even if Vegas doesn't predict that, right? Maybe it's a player gets injured. Maybe a player just shoots 1 of 9 like Candace Parker did her first 2 games. It's very volatile. So what that means to me, and it triggers an alarm in my head in the WNBA or in the NBA and even the NFL and even the WNBA to an extent, but a lesser extent, is trying to avoid cash games today, which is something I don't usually say. Maybe not avoid them. Avoid might be a strong word, but tread lightly in the cash games. And cash games, for those that don't know, are head-to-heads and 50-50s. It's when half the field pretty much wins, or right around there. If you want to throw double ups into cash game format, I really don't. But 50-50s are head-to-heads. One, a lot of people aren't just going to be playing them. There's just not a lot of interest in them in general for the WNBA, especially for a showdown slate. A lot of people probably won't be playing them, so you don't have to worry too much. A lot of your games probably don't fill. But just in general, it's so hard to really accurately predict what happens tonight. The one thing I will say is that, if I can get a confident player pool of 8 to 10 players and I only have to pick 6 of them, well, then I kind of know where most of the scoring and most of the production is going to go. And most people playing head-to-heads or 50-50s might not have that same advantage due to a projection system, due to just understanding the game. So I'm kind of torn on head-to-heads and 50-50s for the WNBA. I rely more so on 50-50s, but if you were to play tonight, but I do think it's a good night to kind of experiment in tournaments a little bit. Obviously, it's a one-game slate, so showdown slate, as always, my favorite strategy. If you're not entering the max lineups allowed, which I assume most of you watching this are not, whether it's 50, 150, whatever it is to leave money on the table. That's the best way to gain an edge. In the NBA for the postseason, there was 30,000 people in the contest, 40, 50,000 people in these contests. So it was really difficult to kind of get a unique lineup, or a lineup that was only you made it, right? It wasn't duplicated by anybody else, or just duplicated by only like 3 or 4 people. So the best way to go and approach that is to leave money on the table, and we were leaving $2,000 on the table in the NBA. It becomes more difficult in the WNBA when you have a very severe drop-off from kind of the starters to the bench players. Some of the bench players in the NBA, you'd have 2 for each team that are viable. For the WNBA, you might have 1 to 2 that are viable overall, and that makes it a lot harder to get unique. But I do think you can leave salary on the table. I think that leaving $500 or more on the table in the WNBA is going to take you a long way, because you don't have 30,000 people in these player pools. You only have however many people in the player pool or that you're facing tonight. It's like, 7,000-8,000 people. It's still a lot, but it's not 30 to 50,000, so you don't have to get extremely unique. If your lineup is the same as somebody's once, okay, well then you split the prize pool, you're each winning $3,750 or whatever it is, instead of the 5,000 prize pool tonight. So I think leaving money on the table should be noted. I think sticking to just tournaments for the most part tonight, 50-50s. I wouldn't tread into the head-to-heads too much. You're going to get to a point where if you follow me on Patreon, which you can go to the link below. You can follow me over there, and you can get the projections, the podcast, and you listen to the podcast today, and the 8 to 10 players that I'm targeting probably end up around 10. You might feel confident in that, and then go ahead and play head-to-heads. I'm just saying tread lightly, because like last night, Jonquel Jones, there's also an update. Jonquel Jones ruining a lot of people's nights last night, just getting in foul trouble really early in the game. 3rd foul, I think, like within however many minutes. It was very soon. That ruined 50% of my entries. I lost, not 100% though. We were saved by Jasmine Thomas, which was nice little save there. But other than that, things like that can happen. Jonquel Jones, top 2-3 player, if not the best player so far this year, just kind of gets shut down because of foul trouble. You don't know when that's going to happen. Aysia Wilson, that could happen to her tonight, and she'll be extremely highly owned on a one-game slate. You could be damn sure she'll be probably 70-80% owned tonight. And if she gets in foul trouble early for some reason and plays 20 minutes and then only gets you 20 fantasy points, she might not be needed. So things like that to keep in mind. I'm not predicting that happens. I don't want to ever predict the unforeseen, because it's unforeseen. You don't know when it's going to strike, so why are you predicting it? So that's where I'm at. That's just sort of the showdown strategy. But let's just talk through some of the things on this slate that I find interesting. I'll talk through just interesting things early on. Keep in mind it's before 7 a.m., so when I do my deeper dive into this, like sort of another look, doing more advanced stats on PBP stats, they have some things over there. And then just looking through some of Basketball Reference, again, for some sort of updated stats for similar defensive matchups. I want to go down, and then that's when I will filter my player pool and really kind of lock in my interests for today. I will be playing the big contest tonight, the $5. I'm not sure if I will be doing head-to-heads or 50-50s just yet. I might set some, not sure. So that being said, something that stands out to me, obviously, whenever there's 2 studs on a slate and they're both coming from the same team, Aysia Wilson and then Liz Cambage, it's tough to want to pick one. I don't think you have to pick one. I think they're obviously both in play, and I think that they're both in play tonight. Aysia Wilson's kind of this locked-in 30-minute per game producer here. There's only been 2 games where she didn't score 30+, and I believe they were blowouts, if I'm not mistaken. Car coming through. So Wilson's kind of this staple for it. She can get you the 40-point upside, but she's more so going to hang around the 30s. While Liz Cambage, if she sees her 30+ minutes, you can be damn sure she's getting you 35+ fantasy points. She's averaging 1.36 points per minute this year. I have her at 30 minutes today. That makes her grade out for like over 35 fantasy points, which is clearly a great play. This game should stay close. It's going to be high pace. So Liz Cambage and Aysia Wilson, who both do have beneficial matchups against LA today based on just defensive efficiency and defense versus position. Yeah, they're both in play, even though they're at the same team, same position. They do cut into each other, that's true. But even if they cut into each other and they're each scoring still over 30 points, anybody who scores 30 points tonight will be needed. It's that simple. So even if the 10K players are scoring like 28, they're probably still going to be needed unless there's 2 to 3 other players that are going off. So them on the top end in terms of the 10K players, yeah, it makes sense. It's probably pretty easy to get them into your lineups. Kayla Mcbride, she's been struggling as of late. Her point per minute has come down, but it's still well above average. Had success earlier in the year. 0.97 point per minute. It's pretty much since Liz has come back and started to regain her form, right? This is now 5 or 6 games since she's been back. She's had 2 games where she's seen over 30 minutes. She's had 3 or 4 where she's seen over 20. Since then, Kayla McBride's point per minute production is coming down. That does concern me, but she's still in play today at only $8,600 now. $8,400 Candace Parker is still probably too cheap. Look, through 3 games, she's only averaging like a 0.6 fantasy point per minute. You can't go off of that. That's a small sample, and that's clearly wrong because she shot 1 for 9 the first 2 games, 11%, 2 of 18 after the first 2 games. Last game, I think she came out, got a double-double, played extremely well. Last year, she was a 1.31 fantasy point per minute producer. Obviously, that was a different overall team that she was playing with. In terms of the pieces around her, but 1.31 fantasy point per minute producer, and then you take into account that she is going to go out there for, I have her at 28 today, I want to give her 30, I just don't know where to take those minutes from. I mean, if you look at this LA team, I have the sisters at 28 and 25 minutes, and then I have Candace Parker at 28, Gray at 29, and then for the last piece of the starting unit, it's Alana Beard at 22, and with that I also have a bunch of players on the bench coming in around 18 minutes. So it's really tough to figure out where to get another 2 minutes. I know that you can just say, well, Sal, just take 2 off of Raquana Williams, put her down to 16, but she just played 27 in the last one, and she hasn't gone below 19 in 3 games now, even with these players back. So it's tough. I think I'm just going to leave her at 28 right now. Even then, she provides a lot of upside. So yeah, Parker's definitely interesting. I think Chelsea Gray on the same exact team is interesting because she's going to be lower owned without a doubt. Parker is going to garner a ton of ownership tonight, and that's why 50-50s make some sense because it's just going to be inevitably a chalk night on a showdown slate where there's like 4 to 5 obvious plays, in my opinion. So Chelsea Gray's a play that is not as productive and not as productive as even a Kayla McBride, but as of late she has been as productive of a Kayla McBride. 0.88 fantasy points per minute. She's very cheap. She'll see right around 30 minutes, which is what she's averaging on the year. Difficult matchup for her, I will say that. But again, this is sort of a leverage play. It's not one that I'm dying to get in there. It's not one that's probably the most optimal when you're building a lineup. But if you're building a GPP lineup and you're not leaving money on the table or you're just trying to be different so you actually win the damn thing, yeah, that's a place that you probably should consider. Similar to Chelsea Gray, Wnba is also interesting, somebody who's not going to play a ton of minutes out there. 18 I have her at tonight. She could see 20, but she averages 1.3 fantasy points per minute. It's obviously a limited sample of like 10 games, but that should stabilize somewhere above 1, right? And decently above 1. So when you're factoring in that she's below $7,000, $6,800, yeah, the minutes aren't there in terms of being extremely stable in the 20s, which you like to see, but she's just an elite producer when she's out there picking up peripherals, rebounds, whatever it might be, blocks. So she becomes interesting at 1.3 fantasy points per minute. Yeah. Something that I will point out, some of the notes that I wrote down, Jackie Young, she still started in the last game, but her minutes are just so unstable. We were getting low to mid-20s out of her, and she was producing decently at her price points. Still started last game, and when she go out there and got like 14, 12, 13 minutes, whatever it was, it's just nowhere near enough. Jackie Young is not that great of a fantasy point per minute producer. She's right at the average. The average right now is, I believe, 0.83. We could actually look. Let me look at the average. 0.82 is now the average, so it's actually come down in terms of NBA players. Is just one of the databases I use. So 0.82, and now she's averaging 0.84, so slightly above average, but if she's not getting you to the mid-20s, it's difficult to see Jackie Young getting in there. The problem is she's going to continue to start. The problem is she's decently priced at $6,200, so she is still attractive on this slate. At 18 minutes, though, it becomes sketchy. And this 18 minutes is kind of in the middle of, she might play 14, 15. She might go up to these 20-point ranges. I don't know what to do with Jackie Young right now. That's something that I'll kind of decide on the podcast. Tiara Ruffin-Pratt, she is going to continue to see less and less minutes, in my opinion. You have Alana Beard back. Since Alana Beard's been back, she saw 23 minutes, and then she saw only 16 minutes. Beard, the weird thing the last time out, she didn't play any of the fourth quarter, and she didn't play half of the third quarter. I don't foresee that happening again. I don't know if they were trying to limit her, but she played 23 the game before, so I doubt it. But maybe they saw that the game was in hand. They also kept Raquan Williams out there for an extended run as she was playing decently well, so she got 27 minutes. I don't expect that to happen. I do think that Tiara Ruffin-Pratt, who only saw 18 minutes, the lowest that she's seen in about a month since Beard was out for a while, she was getting more and more run. I do think that she is kind of now fizzled out of this offense. She's definitely not starting. Beard started the last 2 games, and the player that they're going to more so off the bench now is Raquan Williams. So Tiara Ruffin-Pratt for me at $5,000 is extremely overpriced. I continue to think her minutes go down. I have her at 15 today. I'm not shocked if they go below that. Alana Beard at 22 as a minute projection today. Look, it's tough to really get her point per minute or really anything out of her because she played 20 minutes in the first game. She was injured. She played 23 in the second game. It was a blowout, so who knows how much more she plays. Then she played 16 in this past game, and she didn't play half of the third or majority of the fourth. So what happens in a close game, a game that's close the entire time for Alana Beard's minutes? I'm not positive, but they just can't go high. And if they do go high, somewhere around the 25 to 28 mark, and they do get up there, well, you're probably going to see a big cut in minutes for those of the Sydney Weisses, the Sugar Rogers, the Mabrys, right? Even the Alexis Joneses, who's seeing on average around 15 minutes almost every single time she steps on the court. So Beard, I have at 22 minutes right now. I do believe that continues to cut into Tiara Ruffin-Pratt's minutes. And at 22 minutes, Beard's just not attractive. She's much more of a defensive-minded player. She's not going to be a big scorer out there. And it makes sense, right? You have these sisters out there. You have Chelsea Gray and you have Candace Parker. How many more points can go around? How many more mouths can you feed? Again, it's a one-game sample, so maybe something does happen where she does make 2 threes and picks up a couple steals, and now she's in the high teens in fantasy points. But at 22 minutes, it's really hard for me to see her getting there. She's a starter, so what this does for me is it kind of eliminates some of the bench players for LA. It makes it really hard to want to get to the bench players for LA because Alana Beard's starting. I'm not that interested in her, and now she's going to be cutting into Tiara Ruffin-Pratt, who has to come to the bench. The Sydney Weisses upside, who's now going to be coming off the bench still, but now nowhere near as productive. Outside of that, the only thing that I will say is that at $2,800, it seems like DraftKings made a mistake on Sydney Colson's pricing. She's seen 18 minutes in each of the last 2 games. This was as she was coming back from, I believe, a concussion. She was kind of working her way back. We were tracking it. It was like a 3-minute performance. Then she got like 6. Then she got 9 minutes, and then it jumped up to 18 back-to-back games. I just have her at that 18 today. I want to give her more minutes, but based on her positionality, I don't know who she would really take those minutes from. I don't think that she's going to come out here and take Kelsey Plum's minutes or Kayla McBride, so it's more so just getting backup guard minutes. So I give her 18 minutes, and obviously at 2,800, that's really, really good as long as she's a decent fantasy point per minute producer. She's right around league average at 8.85. So yeah, 2,800, now she lets you do anything you want on this entire slate. Obviously, you have to make a decision at the captain spot. It's a showdown slate, and that's something that I will be discussing in terms of where I'm leaning for captain come later in the podcast. The game's not until 10:30. The podcast I'll probably do around 5 or 6 p.m. I'll have everything situated. That's when I'll do my baseball article a little bit before that as well, so it'll work well. So that's where I'm at. In terms of captains, yeah, the most expensive plays are usually good captains for WNBA and the NBA. They're the ones that you can't make up those points anywhere else. If somebody scores 40 points tonight and there's only one person scoring 40, it's likely that if you put somebody who gets 25 in the captain spot, it's not going to be enough because where else are you making up those points? So yeah, the Aysia Wilsons and the Liz Cambridges are probably the ones that stand out the most. I think there's some say that you could put a Candace Parker in there if it allows you to fit another stud in due to pricing. But we'll talk about that a little bit more on the podcast. If you want to get access to the point projections, which I have blocked out right now just because I want fairness to the patrons. I don't want to just be giving away what they're paying for. That would make no sense, right? So if you do want that, you can head over to Patreon down below. There's also an MLB option and all access for MLB and WNBA, or you can just get WNBA content over there. So I hope this helps. I hope this, if this was your first time here, that it was a good experience. The only other thing I'll touch on is that Kalani Brown, she got no run in the last game, so Parker and Beard, pretty much them adding in more minutes and more bodies, had to push somebody out of the rotation. It was Kalani Brown, so don't be playing her. She will be getting 0 points. So that's where I'm at right now. Nothing else that's standing out too much to be discussed. I hope that helps. If you could hit this video with a like, subscribe before you leave. Appreciate that. Comment down below if you watched the whole thing, what you thought about the video, favorite parts, what you would like to see more of maybe. But this is a showdown slate, so hopefully we covered it all. Peace out, gang.